Welcome to the About Sex podcast. I'm Joshua Skirtu, and with me, as always, is my lovely wife, Angela Skirtu.
Hi.
Hi.
Good
and
to see
with
you.
us today is Rachna. Rachna, what's your last name now?
Rachna.
Rachna. I'm bad at names. Rachna.
It's all good. Rachna Goel.
Rachna Goel.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, and now let me read your little bio. So Rachna has focused her career on working with children and families. She holds a passion for helping individuals attain justice through the legal system. Her experience includes work at a university health law clinic, multiple legal aid offices, and the prosecutor's office. And today we're actually talking about Jane Doe Advocacy Center, correct? Yes. All right, so I'm going to give this back to you in case you want to read stuff.
Yay.
Tell us all about the Jane Doe Advocacy Center.
Sure.
And why it's awesome.
I love talking about Jane Doe. So
cool.
Jane Doe Advocacy Center, we call it Jane Doe for short, is a legal service center here in St. Louis for survivors of sexual violence. So what does that mean? Because that's a whole lot of really big sounding words.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there could be a lot of different ways people could suffer for sexual violence, right? So, like, what are the types of clients that would come to you?
So the types of clients that come the most often are people who have been sexually abused by someone they know, usually by a spouse, a romantic partner, someone they share children with, someone that they're connected to in some way. And then they have legal issues that result from that. So some of our most common clients are people with issues that end up in family court. So they've been abused by a spouse and they need to get divorced, or they've been abused by a co-parent who they're not married to, and now they have some child custody issues to deal with as they separate. So
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's kind of a statistic, like, so it's actually more common to suffer from abuse from a family member or a close friend than it is a stranger, correct?
Yeah.
It is. I don't know the statistic offhand.
I don't know what it is.
It's
I just know it is a thing.
You know it exists.
It is a thing, and I would venture to say it's most cases of sexual abuse happen by somebody you know. It's actually very rare to be abused by a stranger.
Yeah.
But the stranger cases, because they're so rare, end up getting a lot of media attention and a lot of focus.
Because they're really tragic. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean,
so
they're
that's
all
what people
tragic,
end up
but-
being the most
yeah.
afraid of.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So, like, how do you help them? Save the world,
That's
Rachna.
a great question. What are legal services,
Yeah, what
right?
does that mean?
What does that actually mean? So whenever a survivor needs to talk to a lawyer, that's what Jane Doe is here for. So sometimes it's just that they're in a situation, they know that there's legal implications, they don't know what exactly they are, and they just need to sit down and have a conversation so they know what to be prepared for.
Right.
Other times they have an active case in court, whether they filed it or their assailant filed it or something happened, and they're like, ooh, I need a lawyer now because there's an active case going on. Other times we have people who call who don't really know what they need. And so it's really a matter of starting with, okay, forget the fact that I'm a lawyer, forget the fact that we do legal stuff. Like, what are your actual goals? What do you need to get out of the situation you're in? And then we see if we can help them get there through the legal system.
Give me an idea of a profile. So you don't need to tell me any specific, but like who's calling you like, I need you, but I don't know why. Like, who's this person and what are they confused about typically?
That's a great question. So
I've never just called a lawyer randomly, like, I think I need you. So I'm just teasing.
Well, I think that's where being a nonprofit organization comes in, because then people are like, oh, this is a nonprofit.
Oh, okay.
And so they might offer any type of services because nonprofits do so many different types of things. So that's when a lot of times they're like, well, are you a shelter? Are you a counselor? Who are you? But our clients are they're mostly females. We do work with men. We work with children as well. But our clients most of the time are females. They're usually somewhere between the age of, like, I'd say 25 to 40, give or take. Okay. So younger approaching middle age. And it's when they've been abused over a period of time. That's usually when they tend to contact us the most and be like, we don't know what to do.
Right.
The isolated incidents, they usually know what's going on. They call and people can say, there's a case pending in criminal court. We have the police report filed. There's an investigation going on, something like that. And then they're seeing if there's anything they can do to follow up on that civilly or to be prepared. But it's usually when the abuse has been going on over a period of time.
Okay.
And for a lot of women, they don't speak up when the abuse is just happening against them. But then when they start to see their children being affected by it, that's what makes them come out, and that's what makes them call and essentially say, what can we do?
Yeah.
I see.
They're looking for help.
Yeah. Well, so what makes you better than other lawyers?
What makes you better than other lawyers?
I'm totally teasing, but
The
what makes you
hard-hitting
awesome?
questions, Angela.
I just got this halo above my head.
That's the hard-hitting question. We're really going deep here.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm better or worse than other lawyers.
Own it, Rachna.
There are some fantastic lawyers out there, so I can't just cut
I know,
I have some great colleagues. But what makes us different is that most lawyers focus their careers and their practices on a certain area of law. So lawyers might do family law, they might do criminal law, they might do general personal injury law.
Right.
They might do a certain type of law, and then they take their clients on a case-by-case basis that way. Okay. Instead, we flip it around and we look at it by issue. So we work with sexual abuse survivors regardless of what their legal needs are. So when I first started Jane Doe, I was really interested in family law, and it was the domestic sexual violence that most of my experience was in. So that was the vision I started it with. But it took less than a year to realize people have a lot of other legal needs that can arise from sexual abuse as well that aren't necessarily family law. So some that we've done, let's see. So we do like our family cases, we do our child cases, and then we do what I call like our grab bag cases, which are the ones that we just never anticipated coming up.
Yeah.
But for example, we once had a landlord-tenant issue. So we had, our client was the mother of a little girl, and the little girl was being sexually abused by another older child in the same apartment complex.
Oh.
So they filed a restraining order against that child to keep the kids apart, which was exactly the right thing for her to do. Only then the landlord got upset and tried to evict them for creating ruckus within the residential community.
Is that legal?
Wait, the victim?
The victims.
Correct.
That's, like total blame the victim situation here. You're like, you need to get out because you've been abused.
Literally trying to punish the victim.
Right.
Like, come on.
And especially when you're looking at, if it's a Section 8 housing, if it's limited ability, if it's in a really small school district.
It's already
moving
hard to
isn't
get
very
out of
easy.
it's already hard to find a place to live, let alone to have to move randomly because you've been abused.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
Exactly. So, we had cases like that. We had a couple cases in civil court where people were, they'd already gotten out of abusive relationships, but then later on down the line as retaliation, their former abuser, their former spouse, would sue them in civil court for things that could be pretty frivolous, but they still had to fight the lawsuits. So things come up all the time. And what we found at Jane Doe is that it's really helpful for people to have access to a lawyer to answer their questions and to know what's going on, and then to make a plan of action going forward.
Yeah, because sometimes people don't even know what they're supposed to do. Like, they don't even know what to sue for.
If I weren't a lawyer, I might not know what to do in situations like that.
I never know what to do, in general.
In general, he's just walking around with his hands.
I don't know what to do with my hands, in general.
Except when it comes to working the equipment. You're
Oh,
good
yeah.
at that.
I can set these up, then I'm done. Then I just sit here.
Well, I wonder if that's why people don't report. I always hear that people don't report cases of abuse or sex abuse. Do you think some of that has to do with people just not knowing how to navigate the system?
I absolutely do, especially the criminal system. I think it is so difficult because I think most people know, okay, something bad happened, I have to call the police. I have to call 911, I have to file a police report.
Yeah, I think I know that.
Right. That first step is usually pretty intuitive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then what a lot of people lose sight of after that is that even though they are a victim or a survivor of a crime, they're not necessarily a party to a legal case. They're a piece of evidence that the state is going to use to try to get...
the person is a piece of evidence?
The victim.
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
It's not their case.
Do they
They're
put them
not...
on a shelf? That's what they do with the evidence. They store it in a room, right?
Right. That's what you think of, right?
I think it's in a bin.
So the person's going to stay in a bin until their case?
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
No, I can't even joke about that.
All right, no, sorry.
But let's look at a really elementary stereotypical sexual abuse case.
Okay.
So you have somebody who has been raped by somebody else. And in this case, we'll go with what's the majority. We'll say there's been a woman who was raped by a man.
Okay.
Right.
So the woman goes to the police and files a police report, gives them all the information. They're going to ask her really probing questions
Yeah.
when it may or may not be in her best interest at that point to be talking about the details, but they need the details. So they're going to get all this information out of her, and then they're going to send her
They're going to re-traumatize her, pretty much.
Yeah, make her relive the trauma again and again and again.
So, and then they're going to send her home, and she might not hear from them for weeks or months or any period of time. And that's usually when I get phone calls of, this happened, I filed a police report, nothing happened.
They have no idea what's going on.
Now what? Yeah.
Exactly. And the process after that really is that the police department, the detectives need to go out and investigate, see how much other evidence they can collect. They essentially, they put it all in a box or a bin. They hand it over to the prosecutor, and then the prosecutor has to look at it and decide. At that point, it's not a matter of determining, is this the truth? At that point, it's, is there enough evidence here to prosecute somebody with a crime? Right. Is there somebody out there who is a danger not only to this person, but to society at large? And if so, we need to prosecute them.
What happens if they don't get enough evidence?
Then they can't prosecute the crime, usually.
So it's just, that's it.
Yep.
Oh.
And that's the point where a lot of survivors feel very frustrated. Because if it's one person's word against another, that person could be telling the truth. They could be telling the absolute truth about exactly what happened. And they don't always know what's out there that could prove it.
Well, what kind of evidence, would you look for, or what would you want the cops to be looking for? Like, in case ever somebody's in that situation, what should they be collecting or giving to the cops? I don't know. Like, how does this whole thing work?
How can they, as a victim, help?
Advocate for themselves after the investigation. Yeah, that's a better way of asking it. Thank you, Josh.
So I wish I were a criminal attorney so I could get into so much detail about this. But from what I know, kind of the things that most people can keep in mind is, the first thing is to report as soon as you can. Yeah. And even if it's been a while, you can always still file a police report. So is it better to file it immediately? Yes, it always is. If it's not immediate, does that mean you can't file it? No, it absolutely doesn't. You can still go in and file a police report. Keeping anything that might have some DNA evidence on it. So the clothing that you're wearing when something happens, sheets on a bed, rugs on a floor, anywhere where DNA evidence may be found, keeping that and not washing it, not trying to get rid of the evidence.
Well, not maybe taking a shower right after something happened, so you can go in and get, isn't there there's a rape kit?
To do a rape kit, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So stuff like that will help preserve the really obvious, more scientific evidence. But other times, there's always stuff around that they might be able to tap into. There could be surveillance cameras. There could be somebody making a recording in the next room that may pick something up. You just never know what they may be able to find. So it's a matter of just making sure you keep everything as preserved as possible, which is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, and in that moment, you're shocked and traumatized, so it's kind of hard to think logically at that point.
Right, and preserving evidence for a criminal trial is the last thing on your mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure, when something happens.
That's generally the last thing on my mind, in general.
Just in general.
Preserving evidence? Well, no wonder you're getting in trouble all the time, honey.
Are you sure you should be on camera right now?
No pictures.
We just need to put surveillance cameras all around the house. No, nothing's crazy. But no, I couldn't imagine being in that situation, and that's the last thing you're thinking about. You're like, holy shit. I'm not supposed to cuss, but we try to avoid cussing. But that is how you would feel in that moment, right?
Yeah.
We try to keep it PG so families can listen.
You're so PG.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so then what kinds of things... All right. So one thing that was on your page is that you do coaching services. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So... most people well, you tell me, when you think about working with a lawyer, what kind of comes to your mind?
Money.
Money.
Too much money.
I'm going to give them money, and then they're going to do things for me. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. So you're going to give them all your money.
Yes.
And they're going to do a couple things for you in return.
And they're going to charge you for every email and phone call.
Right.
It's going to be very expensive.
That's what most people think about when they think of a typical attorney-client relationship. Sure. They think, the client is paying a retainer, and then they're paying an hourly rate, and the attorney is doing all the legwork, and they're charging for all of it.
Right.
And it's true. That's how legal services work. That's how lawyers make their money. And it can get expensive, yeah. It can get expensive, and what I found with survivors is that a lot of times it can make them feel like they're losing control. Because I mean, they have complete control over their case at all times because the way that the Missouri rules of ethics work for lawyers, clients make the decisions. So a survivor is in charge of making all the decisions. They have to agree to everything that's agreed to. They have to know all their options. It's always informed consent every time something happens in court. But when you think about it, if you are a smart, educated person, if you feel like this lawyer isn't really doing anything I couldn't do, I can go into a courtroom, I can talk to a judge, I can send emails, I can request records, I can do all these things, then a lot of times they sit there feeling helpless, like somebody else is doing everything and they don't have any control. So we totally ran across this by fluke once when a client came in who had an order of protection or a restraining order hearing coming up. And this was when I was the only lawyer in the office. I was already booked on the day of her hearing, and it was in 2 separate counties. So there was just no way for me to be in 2 places at once. And she was like, no, I don't want to continue it. I don't want to postpone it. I need to do this. I can do it. I just need to know what to do.
Right.
So she did. She came into my office and we spent about an hour doing Law School 101.
Oh, wow.
Where I talked her through exactly how a hearing would work, what she should be prepared to say, what she should be prepared to present. We went through all of her evidence. We labeled it. And I essentially taught her how to do the hearing on her own.
Oh, wow.
And then she went in against another lawyer and she won.
Wow.
By herself.
Good for her. Good for you, too.
Well, and just the sound in her voice after that, it gave me this whole new idea.
Because she had confidence and felt like, I can do this.
She felt in control.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that confidence she had nothing to do with the restraining order that she'd just gotten. It was, I went up against him and a lawyer, and I did it without a lawyer. All I had was a little paper folder you gave me. And we did it. So after that experience, we started digging into it more. And now we do our formal coaching program for people in any legal situation.
That's awesome.
So we
Okay.
do it mostly
So they can do it themselves. They still pay you for the coaching. And then they go do the stuff.
Exactly. But the fees end up being significantly lower. And you put it on our sliding fee scale and it ends up being even lower than that. And
What? A sliding fee scale?
yeah.
What? Tell me more.
Well, Jane Doe, we are a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Our goal is to make sure that legal services are available to anybody regardless of income. So one of my favorite things is when we tell people over the phone, oh, we have a sliding fee scale. And they say, yeah, I never qualify for those because I have a job. I work full-time minimum wage. I never qualify for the sliding fees. They come in, they do our application. They find out, oh, my gosh, I do qualify.
That's good.
Because we make our scale very broad. Because people out there, we don't just have the people in poverty and the people out of poverty.
Yeah.
There are lots of different
A lot of people
layers
fall
of
right on that.
Oh,
edge,
yeah. I mean,
Right.
even if you are making a full-time minimum wage isn't that great. Yeah, maybe you're
No.
making money, but I mean, I don't know if it's that much over like welfare amount.
No, you have 2 kids, you're already under the line.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that
Exactly.
makes perfect sense. And if you're about to split and like really the income was from the husband or sometimes the abuser, then you're even in a worse situation. I have women, like from my side, I have women who are scared to leave because they don't feel like they have any financial rights. They don't know that Missouri is a 50-50 state. Not that that protects against everything, but even knowing that like, no, you will get some of this income when you guys divorce is helpful for some of the women in my office to know. Or that there is a place they can go at least where they don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars because they're already afraid to
Exactly.
divorce this guy,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It terrifies me sometimes. The stories I hear, people come in and they need a new lawyer in the middle of a case. They're not jiving with their old lawyers. So they come in and they tell me how much they've spent in like a divorce case that's gone almost nowhere so far, just in the preliminary stages. And they say they've scooped out $15,000-$20,000 already.
What?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is probably like
Sounds like
4 or
divorce is
5
way too
times as
expensive.
expensive as the most expensive case I've ever done. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, and think of
How's it that expensive?
Like think of some of like I think
a
of
lot of
people
money.
who are kind of like manipulative. So sometimes somebody who's very abusive is very manipulative, and so they'll use a court case to essentially manipulate the other person and drag the court case out and keep going back. Like I've heard, so something I learned about this year was high crisis divorces, or like they're basically high conflict where it's not your typical divorce or even your long-term litigation divorce that like ends maybe in 2 to 3 years. It's one where you were married to somebody who really was just a plain jerk. I don't know. That's the clinical term. And and he's going to keep messing with you for the rest of your life. Like, keep taking you back again and again and again. And it's not like a high percentage.
Maybe
but
he should get a hobby. Come on.
There's a percentage of divorces that are like that.
Right.
And these women will come to me because they're just emotionally overwhelmed by constantly having to go back to court again and
sure
again.
Financially too.
Yeah. Do you have cases like this at times?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. And they are some of the most frustrating.
Oh,
I will say
yeah.
that. Because, I mean, our whole goal is to help people get to a place of long-term safety and recovery where they can have something done and move forward.
Like have a good life and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially in family court, especially in family court, a lot of work goes into making sure that things are set in a way that they can last. Like when you put together a parenting plan for kids, I always do it in a way that I make sure, okay, we need to cover everything until this kid turns 18 and then goes to college or trade school or wherever they might be going afterwards. So you can be done and not come back to court. But some people will do it every year, every couple of years, as frequently as they can. Yeah. They'll go back to court and they'll file to change something or they'll file a new case. And
they can just keep suing them as long because they have a shared child together. So
Correct.
they can bring them to court anytime they want over that.
They can do it. And what most people don't
get. They can.
I had a talk with my brother about this just recently, and even he was shocked that you can file a court case against anybody. Angela,
sure.
I could go in and sue you.
We could go sue Donald Trump today. And actually,
Why
it's a tactic.
It's
a tactic people.
Trump, I understand.
Well, it's a tactic some people use to hurt other people. They just keep suing them, and then they have to build up legal fees.
Well, that's what I'm
saying. That's how big companies like Microsoft or
I go
Google
and sue
can
you for
beat
something
you.
completely
You can't afford
ridiculous
it.
that never actually happened.
But just because there's a case out there, then suddenly, I mean, like for me in my field, I have to fight it. But even in my field, like to have a case put against me is something that can already like put my license on hold, or like I have to like talk about like that means every time that I reapply for my license because we like get a recertification. No, please don't sue me. I try to make you guys happy, but I'm not perfect. You know, nobody's perfect.
You're perfect.
Right. But the thing people don't get is you still have to fight against that case. You still have to deal with all those consequences. Just because the case is frivolous, it doesn't automatically get thrown out. And that's why these abusers can keep taking their survivors back to court. Because they have the legal grounds, they make up the legal grounds to do so, and then all of a sudden they're back in court. Constantly. Are you guys like making funny faces at each other?
I did.
I don't know what she's doing.
He kept moving the mic, and he's done it 50 times. You can stop doing that.
I'll move the mic all I want. I can move it up here.
You don't need to do it. It looked like a nervous tick, and I'm like, we're on the
It is a nervous tick.
Stop, it's fine.
But
I tried to do
nobody
it discreetly, but it didn't work at all. So we might as well get right out in the open. My husband keeps moving the mic, and I wanted to tell him.
My wife is never discreet.
I'm also never discreet. I'm never discreet.
It's the least discreet person I've ever met.
That's not the word I would use to describe.
It's like you would never
I'm really
say
out and in your face.
She would never be a good spy at all because she walks in and everybody notices.
That's how you know I'm honest. I've got an honest face, and even when I am like
honest.
trying
You're
to be
lying.
nice,
that's what she wants us to think.
Oh yeah, you're totally honest.
Even when I am being nice, you can see it on my face that I'm struggling with something. Now I've just gotten more out with it with clients, you know. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to be honest. I hate that this is the truth, but this is going to be bad for you, and I just put it out there.
And you know what I've learned? Professionals who do that were apparently very rare. Who are just very blunt and honest and
people
say, you know what, this
it.
sucks, but this is the reality, and you just let's figure out how to
Let's figure out how to deal with this reality.
Yeah.
No, I think clients really like and value that deep honesty because honestly, they don't want you to be nice to them. They already know what's going on.
Friends
they already know their case
don't
sucks.
Like it as much.
Friends and family do not. You do need to be nice to your friends and family.
That's a whole different podcast.
No, I'm blunt with everybody, and it does not always work.
Sometimes it's not always great to be blunt, but on the show it works really well.
Sure.
I love you, babe.
This is too much fun. We're having too much fun.
We're having too much fun for abuse. I think we need to get back on. The show is meant to be playful too, but it is hard to be playful about abuse. Right. I will be fair because it's a serious topic, and we do want to take it seriously.
Sure.
So what else do we need to know about this? I know, right? I went to like humor.
So I had a question. So on your questionnaire,
Josh,
I got you. So you mentioned non-domestic sexual violence. There's a lack of legal an advocacy service for that. What is that? Non-domestic sexual violence?
That's great. And I don't know if it's an official term. I coined it myself back when I first started Jane Doe. And there are some advocates out there who hate me for it. I'm going to be totally open about that.
They hate you for it? Why?
Why do they hate you?
So there's this term out there, domestic violence, right?
Yeah, we know
hear
what that
it a
is.
lot. There are a lot of different organizations that work on it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We have a bunch of social services that are defining domestic violence differently than the legal system does.
Yeah.
And it's for a myriad of reasons. I think grant funding has to do with most of it in terms of what people are actually funded to cover and then what they can call it. But the disconnect is that most places that do domestic violence focus on intimate partner violence. And there are some exceptions to that. So I can't, politically correct. I can't make sure, I can't say every organization that does domestic violence is only focused on intimate partners. But a lot of them are.
Yeah.
So we have a legal system that defines domestic violence much more broadly. It's not just intimate partners, it's family members. Sometimes it could be roommates or people who live with you. Josh is taking away my mic. He doesn't like what I'm saying.
No, he's just he loves sound to be good.
Sorry. Go on.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we have one definition of domestic violence that's very narrow. Then we have another one that's very broad.
Yeah.
And people don't always know which category they fall into.
Yeah.
And when they fall into one for legal purposes and then one for social service purposes, how confusing is that?
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
The question that was posed to me back when I first started Jane Doe is, what do you do? What do you do if you are sexually abused, but it is not by somebody you are domestically related to? It's by like a friend or an acquaintance, which we already talked about is some of the most one of the most common types.
Yeah.
What do you do about that? And I thought about it and I said, you know what? Well, you wouldn't qualify for any of these intimate partner services.
None of them.
Oh,
So
wow.
there was just this whole gap in the nonprofit sector in terms of where can these survivors go to get help.
Okay.
And as a lawyer, that just irked me so much. I hate that. I hated that.
You don't want
there
anybody
was this-
falling through the gaps.
And there's plenty of
Exactly.
people who have that experience. So yeah, I mean, that's a whole group of people that need help that have nowhere to go.
Exactly. And then you tie in the fact that most nonprofits work with the lower income population. They don't always work with all survivors, and you have a huge gap. So we try to fill that gap. And I always try to make it very, very clear to people that we work with survivors, whether it's considered domestic violence or not, because those non-domestic violence survivors need to know that they have a place to go for help too.
Yeah, they still need help.
I see. So non-domestic, meaning not in the home, but like a close by, friend or...
By anybody else, a friend,
Yeah.
an acquaintance, a stranger, anything that's not domestic.
A lot of what I've seen is that in those cases, it'll be like people who come to the house often. There'll be friends or like friends of like the mom or friends of the dad or like, like just somebody who's frequenting the house often. But they're not quite a family
friend.
member.
Yeah.
And then it seems to be like the case, like they're already there. They're already a safe person, it seems. And then they're not,
Right.
And I would think in your field, the same thing would come up with people who are abused by people in positions of authority.
Yeah.
Because they're people who, you're trained to follow them, to listen to them. They're the leaders, and you trust them.
I want to know what your opinion is on this, but I will say that some of my hardest cases were cases where a woman is married to a lawyer. And the lawyers, you guys do hold a bit of power in that you have knowledge. You have knowledge of the legal
system.
system.
It's like being married to a therapist.
It's like being married to a therapist who has a lot of knowledge of social and life skills.
When you're talking about relationships, they seem to have one up on you when it comes to
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. And so some of my, I'd say hardest and almost scariest cases have been ones where the partner is a lawyer and the wife is just so scared to even say anything or do anything because she's worried about the ramifications of divorcing a lawyer.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on
divorcing
this
a lawyer?
situation? How does one divorce a lawyer?
Well, hopefully I will never personally have to talk to you about this.
Definitely.
But it's hard. I'm just kind of trying to think through my head. I don't know that I've had any cases where we had a survivor who was married to a lawyer, but we have had some where survivors were married to police officers.
Oh, okay. So
we're going to have a similar
thing.
dynamic there.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is very hard because, the legal community, I'm sure it's the case of the mental health community too, it's tight-knit. Everyone knows
Everybody knows everyone.
The lawyers all know the judges know the lawyers. Even if it's just a professional relationship, there's still some rapport happening there. And it's really hard to take a lawyer to court and accuse them of something.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a mutual divorce, if they're going to agree to it, if they both agree, yes, the marriage is over, then I can imagine that it would be just
then
fine.
It's fine,
right?
yeah.
It might even be easier if someone knows what to do and if they trust each other enough to
sure.
go that route. But when abuse gets involved, it would be very, very difficult to make that happen and to ever feel like you're getting a fair shake in court. Because you walk in, you know, they might know other people in the courtroom. They might know the court reporter. They might know the judge. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah. That must be tough.
It is. It is tough.
But it's not undoable.
It's not undoable.
Not
Yes.
undoable.
You're capable of getting
it
through
can
that.
be done.
It's
Yes.
doable. There we
It
go.
can be done.
It's not undoable. It's doable.
Oh, I guess, yeah. Play on words.
That works.
You cannot not communicate. And so what our first lesson in therapy was like, the double negative. Just means you're always communicating with your hands and
It
your
is
body
not a barrier.
and your face.
You can overcome it.
You can do it.
You can do it.
That's our PSA for today. You can do it. Divorce him or her. No, I'm also a marriage advocate. I just want to put it out there.
Unless they're being abused.
Yeah, I mean,
Get
well,
out.
I always say this, that like I'm a marriage advocate, except in cases where like mental health is at stake. And so mental health, personal, mental, and physical health can trump a marriage. But I always am an advocate for marriage because most people come to me because they want help, you know? So if you come to me, my first goal is going to help you guys be kinder to each other. And even in cases of intimate partner violence, I have worked with people who have some violence, but I will say my best cases in that situation is where both people have readily admitted that they have crossed lines when it comes to the fights, that they've gotten violent. It's usually a little easier if they're both violent. I know that sounds wild, but like because they're both kind of recognizing that they have emotional dysregulation problems, then they're both owning it and willing to do something about it. And in those cases, I'm absolutely willing to help you guys come up with ways to calm down and think before you act, and when it comes to arguments. But I will say it's harder when it's a case where it's really an intense abuse situation and it's a little bit more extreme and one partner is very frightened and the other partner doesn't even know that the partner's basically wanting to end the relationship. And those are the cases where I usually actually send them to you and then get like death threats later on the phone.
We shouldn't be laughing about that, and yet
You
we're laughing
joke,
about
but
that.
you have
We
gotten
joke,
death
but I
threats.
have gotten one.
And I bought you pepper spray.
He bought me pepper spray after he's like, you need to be safe. And I was like, well, it's not always the
It's
case.
on top
but when
of
it
the fridge.
does, I do want to protect people, you know? So I wonder, is that an okay thing to ask? Have you ever gotten like threats on the phone for like, I mean, because you're doing work with violence and
I'm
stuff.
trying to think. I don't think I have. Knock on wood. There wasn't.
Yeah, like today it's going to happen.
I haven't, and I've never really been afraid of it because the one thing I've noticed is that when an abuser has abusive tendencies, it's because they are mad at the victim or at the survivor.
Yeah.
They're not usually angry with me. Or
Yeah.
I mean, they don't like me, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Especially if we go to court and if a case goes to trial, they hate me. But I'm not usually the one that their aggression is targeted toward.
Right. And the last person you want to target is a lawyer or a cop. Like
Yeah, it's probably
they work in the legal
That makes
system. They're going to
sense.
take you down right away. Like really, come on. You don't threaten a lawyer.
Well, and I want to be fair. Nothing's been followed through with. I mean, I'm alive.
Wait, they didn't kill you?
Nobody killed me.
I gotta
And
pay them
I
better.
think they were empty threats, too. I just think somebody was mad in a situation, and so they wanted to target
No.
it somewhere. But I don't,
Yeah, they were just trying to-
nobody
they
ever
were
was
just
really
angry.
going to follow through to
Yeah.
my, I hope. Please don't kill me, guys. I really don't want to die. I really like my life.
Fine, they won't kill you.
The more you know.
But it is something to think about when thinking about your client's safety.
You're
though.
silly.
Yeah, sure.
And if you know that the aggression is going to be geared toward them, it is something to tread lightly about.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not just here to protect myself, but
No.
I have to make sure that I'm not riling up some extra anger that's going to be taken out on my client later either.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We always do safety planning, which I don't know. I mean, do you guys do a little bit of safety planning too with Jane Doe?
Not a whole lot. I mean, we're lawyers. We're not social
You're
service
not
people,
therapists,
so we're
yeah.
not really qualified to do that. But we always touch on it a little bit, especially about the big things. So, it's like, okay, well, next time this happens, let's talk about some things you can do. Mm-hmm. Or if it comes to the point where I think they need a real safety plan, I send them off to a counselor or to a caseworker or somebody who can help them do it in more detail.
That's good.
Okay, cool. Well, any other thoughts or questions, babe?
No, I think
wow. Do you have any final things you want people to know about Jane Doe? Like if anybody's listening, just things that are important for them to like, either for how to contact you or,
Absolutely. So,
whatever you want to say.
well, the one thing
You're so good at questions,
like to tell
Angela.
people.
I'm good at this, right?
Is there anything
Do you have things to say?
Do you have things? No, I'm just trying to wrap it up here in a nice way.
I love you. You're crazy.
I love you too. So continue. What's your message?
So the thing I always want people to know is that there is help out there and you shouldn't be afraid to ask for it. So at least as far as Jane Doe is concerned, give us a call. When you call us, you're going to talk to one of our lawyers. You can go on our website, read a bunch of stuff about kind of what's going on. You can schedule phone appointments with lawyers, but call and get your questions answered.
What's the website and number?
Oh, of course. The website is www.janedoeadvocacy.org.
Easy.
Or if you are in Missouri and you want to just give us a call, the number is 314-329-5339. But yeah, call, get your questions answered. If we can't help you, we're going to tell you, and we're going to direct you to a place that can help you based on what you need.
Yeah, because sometimes people don't even know what they need.
Exactly.
Like, do I need a lawyer?
Even if you just need direction, call them.
Wait, like how do I get to St. Louis downtown? Like,
in that case,
they're not GPS.
I'll just tell you to download Waze or Google Maps.
Come on, get Google Maps. What are you talking about?
I use that to get
my goodness, right?
That works.
And I just wanted to put in my plug, of course, if ever you need therapy, go to www.therapistinstlouis.com. I have my book coming out this January. It's called Helping Couples Overcome Infidelity, a Therapist Manual. Mm-hmm. But all my books I write easily for both therapists or people, like regular people in the population. And most of my clients will read my book. So they're totally easy to read if you want to check it out.
Oh yeah, they're great
reads. That. You gave me one.
Oh yeah. It's pretty easy to read, right?
Easy read.
Yeah, you feel like you can be a therapist
I didn't feel stupid. That there was a lot of jargon in it. No,
I really made it. I like them to be reader friendly, regardless of who's listening. And cool,
that's awesome.
And then, of course,
and you can always find us at aboutsexpodcast.com, and please review us on iTunes and subscribe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.